A lot of authentication scams result from a form of social engineering. Now, social engineering is, of course, taking advantage of somebody else through trickery in order to become authenticated, or for some other reason, but in this case we're looking at authentication. So let's look at a few of them. And by the way, I have more terms here than you have in your textbook, and so this just expands on the textbook a little bit, although most of these terms up front here are in the textbook. Phishing. So phishing is always associated with email. Don't use the term phishing in talking about, say, fake websites or things on the phone, tricking somebody on the phone. These are phishing, rightly in the cybersecurity world, is always associated with email. So phishing is simply a game of odds, as I have here, sending out some baited email to hundreds, thousands, even millions of people in order to get the few who fall for it. Spearfishing is also always associated with email because it is a form of phishing, but it is a more you up the odds, so to speak. You send out maybe to a few hundred people or even a few dozen people. So let's say that we know that a large company has several buyers in the company who do acquisitions for things. And let's say that we know they always use Office Max for their office supplies. So we might send a spearfishing email to the buyers that looks like it's from Office Max in order to get them to take some action, like click a web page and log on to verify their account or something of that nature, or tell them that they owe them money in order to see if they will write a check. So that's what we call spearfishing. It's fishing in a barrel, so to speak. And now we have whaling. Whaling targets a high-profile individual. It is usually also a form of phishing, although whaling is sometimes used in a more broad sense. But it is a very specialized form in which you target a very high-profile individual, a CEO or somebody very rich. Almost always, a whaling attack follows a very, very intensive reconnaissance phase in which you find out everything you can about the person. Maybe you learn about the accounts that they log into. You learn about their families, their responsibilities. So you get a great deal of information about them. It might be about the operating system they use, all sorts of stuff. And then you customize for that one individual how you're going to attack them to win over their trust so that they give you what you want. So that's whaling. Phishing is phishing by phone. So phishing is always associated with email. Phishing is always associated with the phone. So using the phone to con somebody into something. So this is, for example, the user who calls IT, or the fake user who calls IT and pretends that they lost their password and asks for a password reset, or somebody who calls Amazon and tries to get them to reset a password based on a credit card number that they know is in the system. That it was a real event, by the way, that happened some time ago. They've now closed that loophole, but it's a very interesting story about a reporter who was hacked. And that was one of the first ways that the people got in, was by knowing the last 4 digits of a person's credit card and convincing Amazon that they were the real user. Farming. So farming is a web page trap, usually making a web page look like a legitimate web page. So if you can make a web page that looks like a legitimate bank logon page, and somebody puts their banking in for their username and password in that, and you harvest that, that would be a form of farming. Often the Wi-Fi man-in-the-middle attack is a form of farming. By setting up a very strong Wi-Fi access point and putting on that a page, a login page, a company logon page that looks just like the company logon page. So when people connect, because their devices are going to connect to the strongest signal, so when it connects to that strong signal from out in the parking lot, it looks like the login page. So they log in, and now they're giving the attacker their login information. Typo squatting is a domain name typo trap. So for example, if I take out a domain Google with only one O, then I will likely get people that think they're typing Google, Google, but they mistyped it, and they get my site. Well, I can make my site look like a Google site, or I can redirect it somewhere else. For many years, for example, there was a site called whitehouse.com that looked like the White House. Well, people thought they were trying to get to the whitehouse.gov site, but didn't realize it was .gov. And whitehouse.com was actually a porn site. And I think whitehouse.com now is some sort of a polling and some sort of gambling site. Let's see if I can find it here. I'm going to go whitehouse.com. Yeah, we are a hybrid model incorporating both betting and poll results in one site. So it's a betting site, a political betting site, but it is certainly not the government site that someone might be looking for. That would be a form of typo squatting. Pretexting is a more generic umbrella term, any form of pretending to be somebody you aren't. So for example, I call some unsuspecting employee on a house phone saying, and I'm a visitor, right? And I say, hey, I'm from IT. We're having some problems with your end of the network. Could you pull up a command line and type the following, right? And I trick them into doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Or I say, I need your password to such and such. And so they give me their password. That would all be a form of pretexting. Hoaxing is a false warning. So whenever you see the word hoaxing, it means you're warning people of something that isn't real. Many software websites say, hey, you have a breach. You have a virus on your system that we detected. You need to buy our software in order to get rid of it. Most likely the software is as much a virus as what they're claiming was the virus, but that would be a form of hoaxing. Of course, there are many, many other scenarios that could also be called hoaxing, as long as it's a false warning of some kind. Shoulder surfing, physically looking over a person's shoulder to get information from their computer, door codes, etc. I once had a student, I was in a small private school that had push button combinations on the classroom doors, and this student decided that they were some great hacker or something and would watch the code that I put in. And one day, actually while I was in the middle of class, came in late, put in the door code and walked in thinking that he was looking pretty cool. Of course, I gave the class a lecture on what happens if you know the door codes and something gets missing from the class. Guess who the police are going to go to first? And that seemed to put a stop to that. But anyway, often this is not uncommon in high profile areas like politics and so forth, where somebody just is sitting at an airport or a hotel lobby area, and they get up and walk behind a person who's doing some computing that they want information from, and surreptitiously take a picture of the screen to get information. That's a form of shoulder surfing as well. I did not put in here, and I should have, dumpster diving. Dumpster diving, so you'll just have to do this without any print on the screen. Dumpster diving is going through trash to find information about a person, sometimes passwords or accounts, bank accounts, things like that might be found in dumpster diving. It's amazing what can be found by dumpster diving. two terms here, tailgating and piggybacking. So tailgating is following someone into a secure area without their consent. So for example, you just stand around in a lobby and you wait till somebody comes in and swipes their card or pushes the code, and then before the door closes, you just help yourself. That would be tailgating. Piggybacking is following someone into a secure area with their consent. So you have a handful of boxes and you can't open the door yourself. And when somebody comes along, you say, uh-oh, can you hold that door for me? I got this big handful. So usually it's under the auspices of courtesy. Of course, everybody wants to be helpful. And so they will hold the door for you and let you in even though you are the bad guy. There are more terms than this, but these are some of the more prominent ones that you should get to know. So I hope you have found this helpful.